Hi everyone, today I'm starting off a simulator series which you can follow, and eventually at the end of it all you'll have a working system to create your own simulator type game. So first of all I want to make a folder to store all the players' cash, stats and any other progress they make during their time playing. Now to do this we need to add a script inside server-script service, and I'll enlarge the screen here so you can see the script and catch up. On the first line we're telling the game that when a player joins, a function will be called to create a folder. First of all we create a variable called player values, and this is going to be the folder itself. We say player values equals instance.new, and then in brackets and speech marks we put folder with a capital F. Now that will create the folder. So we have to say that player values.name equals player values, and finally we need to tell the game where to place the folder, with player values.parent equals player. Okay, so now we can see that under the players and under your player name, we now have a folder called player values. Once that's in place, we can now create the values we want to store for the player when they're in the game. At this stage, I'm just going to make 3 of them. One to track the player's cash, one to track how many items the player can carry, and a third one to track the value of the items that they are currently holding. And you'll see why we need this later on. Again, I will enlarge this so you can catch up in a moment. Now you can call your values anything you like. It doesn't have to be the same, as this is just an example to show you how the system works. I've left the tutorial without a theme so you can create your own. So you can see here for each value we're creating, we have 4 lines of code. They follow the same pattern for each value, with the first line being a variable. In this case it's going to be a new int value, or you could use a number value, they both do the same thing. Then we will tell the script the name of that value, followed by the actual number value we want to give them when the player first starts the game. Finally we add a line saying where we want the value to be kept, and in this case all 3 of them are going to be inside the folder we created earlier. Now when we test the game and open the player values folder, you should now see 3 values inside with the names we gave them in the script. The next thing I'm going to do is create a part which players can collect and later sell for cash. I'm going to use a plain part, but you can use anything you like. Inside the part we add a click detector so players can click on the part, and then I'm going to add a script so the game knows what to do when the part is clicked on. I also need to add 2 number values to the part, one to say how much cash the part is worth when they come to sell it, and the second value to say how much space the part takes up in the player's storage. For each of these I'm just setting the value to 1. So here's the completed script for the part. Now you can pause the video here while you catch up. The first line tells the game to call a function when the click detector detects a mouse click on the part. Then we have 4 variables, which are basically just shortcuts to the player's storage, the player's storage value, the part size and the parts value. Then we need to add an if statement to check whether the player has enough space to collect the part. In this case we just say that if the storage value is greater than or equal to 0, once they collect the part, then they have enough space to collect it. Once the player collects the part, we need to reduce the storage space, and we do this by saying player storage value is now equal to their current storage value minus the size of the part they collected. So say the player originally had 10 storage and they collected a part that was size 1, you'd now be left with 9 storage. We also need to tell the game how much cash the player's parts are worth when they come to sell them. And this is why I created the player storage value earlier. It's basically just a value which temporarily stores how much cash the player will receive when they come to sell the parts. Then on the final line we just destroy the part since it's no longer required. Okay, so now I've duplicated the part, we can test the storage system works. Now we can see the value go down by 1 each time we collect a part. And then once it reaches 0, it won't let me collect these last 2, so it works. Now we need a part to stand on to sell our items, so we add a part to the workspace and create a script inside it. I'll leave the script on screen for a moment while I quickly explain what's going on here. We're basically calling a function when the part gets touched by an object inside the game. The if statement is checking whether the object touched the part contains a humanoid object, so in other words a player's character. And then we're checking that a debounce value is currently set to false. Now we're going to then say that the player's cache is going to increase by the number currently held in the player's storage value. Then we need to give the player a full amount of available storage again, since they just sold their items and they need to be able to go and collect more again. Finally, we tell the game that the player is currently carrying 0 cache worth of parts, since they no longer have any parts in the storage. And then we tell the script to wait for 2 seconds before setting debounce back to false. And this basically just stops the script from going crazy and firing off hundreds of times while the player is stood on the part. Once we have our selling part scripted, I now want to move the collectible piece into replicated storage, and then I'm going to make a new script which will repeatedly clone the part and spawn it into the game at random locations. So in the script we need to create a variable for the original part, which is the one we will be cloning. We then add a while true loop, which basically makes the script repeat itself forever as long as the game is running. Then inside that loop, we start off by creating a clone of the collectible part and tell the game to place it into the workspace so that it appears in the game. Now to keep everything tidy, I have a folder in the workspace which will be where all the collectible parts are placed. In this case, I've called it Collectibles. So then we need to tell the game where we want the part to appear. And we want this to be a random location each time the script adds a new part into the game. To do this, we need to set the part's position. Now the position value uses a vector 3, which is basically just means a set of 3 numbers to represent the location along the X, Y and Z axis. So as you move a part around in the workspace, you can see the position values changing. The first number is the X axis, followed by Y and Z. So in this script for the X axis, we want it to be a random number. So we do math.random, and then first of all in the brackets we need to enter the smallest number we want. In this case it's negative 21.375, followed by a comma, and then we need to enter the maximum value we want, so I'll quickly drag the part over to get that number. Here it is 19.375. The y-axis determines the height of the part above ground, so in this case I want that to be the same each time at 1.5. And then for the z-axis, we also want a random number, so again we do math.random and then get the 2 values for that. So the minimum here is negative 23.625 and the maximum is 13.125. Once we have the part's position scripted, I want to add a wait value to essentially pause the script before it starts all over again, and I'm just using a random amount of time between 5 and 10 seconds. Now to test everything works. So you can see the parts appearing randomly in the game area, and I can collect these before selling them at the sell part. So that's the first bit done. Hopefully you found this helpful, and if you did, please like, comment and subscribe to my channel so you get notified when part 2 is released. Goodbye!